moment to consider what are some of the greatest songs to be written. I'll give you guys a minute. Just think of some of the greatest songs. It can be your favorite, or it can just be songs that are just objectively great. Okay? Now, raise your hands if any of the songs that came to your head were a Beatles song. Okay. Well, today, this actually kind of works, because today I'm going to convince you that one of the greatest Beatles songs of all time should be considered one of the greatest pop songs of all time. So as a musician, I have great respect for the song "A Day in the Life." It has brought in a lot of musical elements together. It's blended just so many genres all into one, and it has like this grandiosity to it that anyone like me just has to admire. So if you bear with me, I'm going to be diving into some music theory, but it's nothing too complex. So if you just open your mind and listen, and I will do my best to help you guys understand. So to start off, the musical composition is probably one of those the greatest parts of this song, as well as with any song. However, this song goes above and beyond what normal pop songs do. So to give the context, this song came out in 1967. So the Beatles have been around since 62, 63, writing traditional pop rock sounds. The entire world went crazy for it, and because of this, they slowly became this commercial product, and they wanted to shed this. Thus came their album Sgt. Pepper's as a way to go away from this. And they really wanted not just their image to be changed, but the music itself, which gave way to this grandiosity that came along with it. To break it down, there's no real chorus to this song. In fact, that's one of the song structures that kind of separates it from traditional. It doesn't go intro, verse, pre-chorus, or chorus. It's just an intro, a couple of verses, and then it goes into a bridge. One thing to note that most traditional pop songs contain about 4 chords within a verse or a chorus. This song, the verse alone has all the 8 chords that any traditional pop song will have. So if you pay close attention, you can look either there or there. The verse is in the key of G, and it's a G major scale progression. So if you bear with me just for a second, you may be wondering what's a scale. If anyone has ever taken like a music class or played the recorder in elementary school, the major scale you guys might know is like the do re mi, like for example the key of G. So it follows this it's like a major scale, so it has like this kind of happy feeling to it. In the Day in the Life, it starts off in G, then it goes on into with the third. If you look over there, the third note of the scale being B minor, and then goes to the 6th, which is E minor. So if it's in a major scale, you'd think, oh, it's probably a pretty happy song. However, the way John Lennon or George Harrison plays the acoustic guitar and the kind of chord inversions that they play has this almost somber feel to it. So instead of sticking with any of the major chords like C or D, they stick with the minor chords. For those who have not heard the song, it kind of goes a little like this. And then it switches up to the second half to the C, and oscillates around. So it sounds fairly dream-esque and kind of moody in a way, which is very different from this. Then it goes into the bridge, which simply goes about a very different kind of style. I will discuss like the change from the verse to the bridge in a second. But the bridge goes into E major, and if you look, over here, there is no E major within the G major progression. Therefore, it's a key change, entire key change. And it doesn't go simply about in a traditional manner. It goes about this. One of the greatest symphonic elements in pop music. So, Paul McCartney and George Martin being the producer, wished to have this 28 measure break in between Lennon's part and what would become Paul McCartney's part. They mixed woodwind, strings, and brass, and essentially asked them to start from the lowest note that they could possibly play on their instrument to the highest, which is just pure chaos in the eyes of anyone and the ears of anyone. It's chromatic ascent all the way to that E major chord, and it completely changes up the song from this moody thing to almost kind of a pop little jaunt. To go back from Paul McCartney's jaunty bridge comes one of the greatest things of the song. It's the quadriplagal harmony, which sounds very scary for most of you, I can understand, but if we break it down, quadri meaning four, plagal, which is a music term for fourth, and as we go back, the fourth degree of the scale is C. So in order to get back to the tonic, that would be John Lennon's portion. They go from C to G to D to A, and to this tonic, the E, and then there's another key change that goes back into it, which is it's one of the greatest pop plagals you can find in music. It was noted in Hey Joe by Jimi Hendrix and so on. Not everyone holds my same opinion, however, though. Even in 1967, when the first the album came out and the song, Richard Goldstein, a New York Times reviewer, regarded the album record as busy, hip, and cluttered, as well as a surprisingly shoddiness in composition. And I think he's missing the point. I think that's exactly what the song is, and that's what makes it great. How I don't agree with the shoddiness, but I do agree with the busyness, and the clutter. That's one of the greatest appeals of the song. Going on to the next one, the lyrics. So the lyrics here, if you can see, if you can't see there, you can look here. Just taking a cursory look at Lennon's part and McCartney's part, entirely different styles. Lennon's is so poetic, and McCartney's is straight up just pop. There's nothing real. There's no real ground to it. It's like you woke up and fell out of bed. There's no real not context. There's no real meaning. However, with Lennon's lyrics, just from the opening lines alone, I read the news today, oh boy, about a lucky man who made the grade. And though the news was rather sad, I just had to laugh. You can pull off so many things out of there. You can't really pull off McCartney's. I think that's what's kind of very brilliant of the song. If you read the lyrics and you listen to the song, you can notice that there's the great change is emblematic even in the lyrics. So Lennon occupies a dreamscape, hence the kind of moodiness that's going on, and hence all these kind of ambiguous chords, as well as the plagal cadence, which a plagal cadence it's not a full cadence, meaning it doesn't fully resolve. So there's going to be some ambiguity in there. And then one of the cool things about this song is once Lennon's over and once the entire crescendo of the orchestra comes back up, it is interrupted by an alarm clock. And the first lines that come out after that are Paul McCartney's, I woke up and fell out of bed. So it's almost like the lyrics reinforce this kind of dreamscape that he occupies. And when McCartney's part ends and goes back into Lennon's, the last line, and somebody spoke and I went into a dream. So this kind of partnership between them really elevates the song into kind of this stature that it truly deserves. Some of the controversial lyrics, however, that kind of push pop into this more kind of darker edge that you'd see in the 60s, in the late 60s, early 70s, and even today, with lines that he blew his mind out in a car, and I'd love to turn you on. Now, on first glance, you'd probably think that, someone had committed suicide, or someone is having this, sexual relation. It's actually a reference to LSD. So it's kind of like a very poetic way of saying it, because you never really would get that. To quote Dominic Pedler in his book, The Songwriting Secrets of the Beatles from 2003, McCartney's bridge to the quadruplagal dream sequence, which we just discussed, captures the mood with Lennon's verse as crushing poetry intoned to the blandest of tunes, that being McCartney's. Now, one of the unsung hero of this song is the studio engineering done by Geoff Emerick. Context for that is that they wanted to create new sounds and experiment. So what they had done was they had taken John Lennon's vocals and added an echo effect, again, kind of adding to this whole dreamscape. They had taken, like I said, the alarm clock. They'd taken the Ringo Starr's drums, and had detuned them. Kevin Moraine of Forbes magazine contributed that Ringo tuned his toms very low by loosening the skins, therefore creating this kind of timpani-esque grandiosity in the drums. And then the greatest part of the song lies in the last final chord, which is the E sustain, where several pianists come together and play the same chord. And Geoff Emerick had found a way to basically extend it that goes on for 45 seconds of just one chord, fading out the entire album and the entire song. In conclusion, the main points are that the musical composition within the Beatles, the songwriting partnership between Lennon and McCartney, and Geoff Emerick's studio engineering really come about in the song and wish to kind of bring it all back home within this great piece. Leonard Bernstein, who was a head composer, had said of A Day in the Life that a day in the life still sustains me, rejuvenates me, and inflames my senses and sensibilities. Now, I believe that any song that can do this for anyone should be listed as one of the greatest. And I urge you guys, after you get home, to listen to this song. Thank you.
I have a question for the audience. What songs were you thinking of as the greatest song? Yeah, sure.
Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
there's
I knew that was gonna come.
Other songs.
Oh, like the Sugar Plum Fairy.
Uh-huh.
Dance the Sugar Plum.
Okay, Sugar Plum Fairy.
Actually, a funny thing, in one of the demos, John Lennon as a countant says Sugar Plum Fairy. Like that's like, so like instead of 1 and 2 and 3, and he has Sugar Plum Fairy.
I was thinking of November Rain's Estranged, and then I started thinking about November Rain. Oh gosh, it was a tie. All right, I have another question just for the group. By show of hands, how many of you know the song A Day in the Life? You know it well. Okay. Just to illustrate a point that I want to make a little later, can you raise your hands higher, please, if you know the song and you know it well? Okay. Just hold that image in your head, John. I'm going to come back to that. What questions are there? Go ahead, Maria.
So, for example, like Bohemian Rhapsody, how would this Day in the Life compare to a song like that?
I would consider Bohemian Rhapsody one of the greatest. However, I'm trying to say that this song is one of the greatest, not the greatest. Simply based on the orchestration, the lyrical content, the studio engineering. Without this song, I think it deserves to be on the same level as Bohemian Rhapsody.
I like how you addressed the camera argument when you quoted that guy. He said it was busy and just, I forgot what he said, but I really like the words that he used. Do you see that theme in today's music, being busy and just disruptive and stuff like that?
Actually, quite to the contrary. From what I've heard on popular music radio is that it's fairly lacking. Like, I think nowadays musicians are taking a much more minimalist kind of approach to music. However, which is a shame, because to consider songs like A Day in the Life, where they've spent hours, days, and weeks trying to literally orchestrate this. There was a 40-piece orchestra. They had so many instruments going on about it. I think it's kind of a shame that most music doesn't do that today. And that's why I believe that it should be one of the greatest.
on that type of music? Do you think it's a little bit more busy? I think was what.
Okay, well, I would like to apologize. When I said radio, I meant like, as in like the charts. From what I've seen on Billboard, it seems, that's what I meant, but, with SoundCloud musicians, I really can't say too much simply because I don't have a SoundCloud, but from those who broke onto this scene, I'd say there's not nearly as much work that goes on in this. However, some of those I think have some merit.
Let's put a question to John that deals more directly with the Beatles, with the day in the life, with the content of his actual speech. Go ahead.
A comment and a question. Did you see the movie? I'm very limited in my musical knowledge. The one about Bohemian Rhapsody. But what I noticed that you did, which they also did in the film, was that when they were trying to get the Bohemian Rhapsody on the radio, the man said, "Oh no, it has to be 3 minutes. No one's going to play anything in 6 minutes." And you mentioned that one thing that was great about your song this song was because there was no chorus, and it was unusual that there wasn't a chorus, and so I think probably emphasizing more of that I think is a good way to show the difference, and maybe also show then for people who don't have a lot of knowledge why this is different, and maybe what impact did not having a chorus have an impact then on later songs? Did it? I mean, I don't know. Are there songs now, or do most songs still have chorus?
Oh yeah, most pop songs do with chorus. What my thing is that I think this should be one of the greatest pop songs because it does lack a chorus. So I think I'd say 95% of pop music has choruses. That's just kind of
how long is the song?
The song runs about 5 minutes, and it's under 5 minutes and 30 seconds. I'd say maybe 5:16. So it is still a fairly long song in pop standards.
So we do have expectations of certain things, like romantic comedy, or the expectations of how it should look, and sometimes things are great when they break those expectations. So I think that's what your point is that you're making here, is how it's great because it breaks our expectations.
Yes, I wish I had elaborated more on that. It does very much subvert expectations, especially with the bridge that goes into Paul McCartney's part with the orchestra playing the chromatic ascent all the way up. You know, it's pure chaos. Because with music, you can't really see what's going on. So for the first time to listen to that, must have been it's like such an experience because you don't know what's going to happen. So I wish I went on that subverting.
Yeah, I think one thing you could say is that you don't have Bohemian Rhapsody if you don't have this song first,
Yeah, yeah.
because they're building on that tradition.
Yes.
And we
You
kind of
know,
all know
so-
Bohemian Rhapsody right now, so there's
Right, so, I was thinking Stairway to Heaven.
You are Stairway to
Why is
Heaven.
it better than Stairway to Heaven? And I think that, your presentation, you're very authoritative, you clearly know what you're talking about, and that's a really strong suit. I don't know how you get around the fact that there's an assumption that everybody's heard the song, but actually not everybody in the class has heard the song. I don't know how you play a 5-minute song in a 10-minute presentation.
Right.
I don't know what you do about that, but it would help if you heard the song, it would help the presentation. But now, just as a technical thing, you spend a lot of time talking to this side of the room and not to that side of the room. And so you're gonna want to make sure that you're talking to both sides of the room equally. And maybe that's because we're sitting
the
here.
judges,
Yeah.
Okay, I don't fault you for that. That's just something I want you to be aware of.
And we're in the sunshine.
So, but I mean, and you clearly really like this topic, so that's really good, that comes across too. So, but I think something that might help, JD, is like, why does this matter?
Yes.
Like, why do I care what a great pop song is? I mean, I think you know why, but it's not articulated in the lesson, or in the talk. What is greatness in a work of art? And she kind of alluded to it, with, you know, you subvert expectations. And, you know, but even to have, you know, the Beatles were such an innovative band with their string quartets and then this orchestra. I mean, this is right, am I right about that? And I think you can, so what you need, I think that you're not just talk about why this is a great song, but why it's a great work of art, why any work of art is gonna contain these characteristics. That might be something you could, and I don't think that's too hard for you to bring in. It's there, but it's kind of under the surface instead of delivered out front to the audience. If
I'm
that makes
curious
any
about
sense.
this concept of the LSD and chaos. So is the chaos in the song because of the drug use, the dreamscape, and then the moving? I don't know, I was just sort of confused.
Also, I was under the understanding about that he blew his mind out in the car was a reference to an actual wreck. That's what Mr. Davis has always taught me.
Yeah, the song was influenced by the death of Tara Brown,
Right.
who was a London socialite and
Right.
friend of Paul McCartney.
Right, but that's not what you said. You gotta make sure that you've got, I mean, you know, if you're gonna say it's about LSD, then you're gonna have to address
Historical
you're gonna have to address that, well, people think it's about this English socialite. But you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
just kind of ran out of time.
Right.
I just had
I understand.
That's the problem, there's so much here
Yeah.
in one song, is
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Oh, shit.
I just thought it was really interesting how there are so many different interpretations of what the lyrics meant, because that line also contributes to the conspiracy with Paul McCartney and Ben. Like that whole song and album just kind of
Yeah.
Paul's still alive?
JD, I want to revisit my first comment asking us to throw up our hands. I've got a couple concerns about audience analysis with this task. And I think that you're preparing and delivering a speech that you clearly would be interested in listening to yourself give or listening to someone give. But I think you might reflect on what self-interests your audience have relative to this topic, how you build the speech in a way that more directly addresses the audience's self-interests and our prior knowledge with this song. It would not be unreasonable for you before giving a speech like this to really beat the drum that, hey, everybody listen to this song. And for the past 2 weeks, just blow up people's emails saying, my speech depends on you knowing this song front to back. Maddie, Emily, Maria, listen to this song. This is important, this is historically significant. Then the references you're making to the song itself are clearer in our mind. It helps us to better understand the music theory that you're referencing. And I'm able to follow a lot of what you were talking about in terms of scales and chord progressions. But folks that don't play guitar, that haven't taken lessons, they might really struggle to follow them. I think it's entirely possible for you to make an argument that a pop song is the greatest of its kind. But we need to devise this argument in a way that better addresses the needs of the audience. First of all, why do we care? And second of all, how can you package evidence to support that claim that meets our needs as audience members? Again, you're thinking Stairway to Heaven. I was thinking of November Rain. All right, The Day in the Life used an orchestral score. Yes, so did November Rain. So we might need to think about how the quality of the evidence really sets this thing apart as unique. We might have a further discussion about or talk about uniqueness in the speaker series earlier this semester. What are the qualities that distinguish something as not just one of a kind, but an important exemplar of a one of a kind?
Yeah.
All right, thank you, Jane.